Alright, so I've sketched out my idea for my base. Now what I'm hoping to do is actually have all four sides the same and cut the edges at 45-degree angles so they'll line up and the whole thing will have more form. But just in case, I have cut these 4-inch strips because the bottom here is going to be 4 inches, and so I know I'm going to need a 4-inch square here. If I can, I would love to have again, this as a form, but if I can't, I'm just going to put a 4-inch strip here. And then I'm also going to need some straight slabs for my lid I'm going to try to make. My idea for my texture here, I want to try to combine some ideas that I saw this week. So I'm going to try to do either slip or thin coils out of one of those little mini extruders for my designs. And then these I think I'm going to carve. I may try to do some of these with slip and some with like really thin coils from the extruder. Just kind of going to play around with it and see what looks good. So I've made some notes to myself about what I might try. And then this design is based on Panamanian polletas. Since I'm from Panama, I like to incorporate things that are from there into my artwork. So I decided I would do that in here because I think it's going to look really cool. So I cut some different things out of newspaper here for my template. I picked this up this week too, this idea. Instead of trying to cut them out of tag board right away, that the newspaper works really well because you can fold it and that way you have a symmetrical design, and then you can try as many as you want and it's not a big deal if you don't like the first ones because you're just cutting newspaper. So here are some of my ideas that I have here, and then I have some slabs of different sizes that I rolled out last week, and then what I did was I put them in a bag, but I had them on some newspaper, so you can see this is really like wet and falling apart. So it has absorbed some of the moisture, but it's not gotten too dry yet. I made it a little harder to start constructing, but I thought this is a good level of moisture just for cutting out the different shapes that I need. So I'm going to work on that, and then I'll start constructing in a day or two when it's reached leather hard. So I'm a little nervous about that because I'm afraid I'm going to get it too dry instead of too wet. But I know that my students have struggled in the past with the clay not being dry enough, so I'm going to give it a whirl and see if I can figure out how to get it to the right level of moisture where it's still workable, but it has more structure to it and won't collapse as I'm trying to build it. Alright, so that's where I am now. And then I have my felting knife, and one of the tips this week was to make sure that you hold your felting knife at a full 90-degree angle when you're cutting, so I'm going to give that a shot. And then I have my ribbing tool because I want to smooth stuff out when I'm done cutting. Okay, so I have my templates. I'm going to cut 4 of these because, again, I'm trying to see if I can get them all to fit together, see if that works, and if not, I'm also going to cut some strips of 4 inches, so I'll have those as well. Alright, so that seems to be cutting pretty well. I'm going to do this 4 times, cut my 4-inch strips, and let them dry a little bit, and then I'll come back and show trying to put them together and see how that works. Alright, so I've been leaving my clay a few hours to kind of dry out some because it was not wanting to dry out in this moist weather, and it's about leather hard. So I've trimmed these edges, trying to get a 45-degree angle so that they'll fit together again. So I'm going to try to make them into an actual jar as opposed to 2 flat slabs with a strip in between. So I'm going to give that a shot and see how it works. And if it doesn't work, that's fine because I've also cut some strips that I can add to my base. So that's my next step, and when I have some of that constructed, I'll come back and show what that looks like. Alright, so I have put together my base. I'm really excited. It's not perfect, but I've never done anything like this before. So you can see I have my lid here, and I've made it so it'll sit inside with a little piece attached just by scoring and slipping that fits inside of the base. You know, my shapes are not perfect, but I'm really excited because this is the closest I've done to anything like this ever. And here's my base, and you can see all four sides have that shape to them. I didn't obviously hump them perfectly, so it's a little bit off, but I've got it smoothed in as much as I can on each corner, following what I saw in a video from someone that was making a jar. And then I've attached the bottom here, and I really tried to follow what I learned this week to make this successful. So I'm going to let it sit for a little bit, just get a little bit drier before I start trying to do any carving techniques, because it does feel a little bit soft, especially after working with it. And so I'll show you what I do next with the designing. Alright, so I have my piece stitched together, and it's starting to get harder, so I started to decorate it. First I drew all of my designs with a needle tool, and now I'm coming in with some of these really thin coils to do the areas that I want to stick out the most. Inside of here I plan to do some carving with a thin wire tool, and then some of these designs I'm going to try to do with some raised slip. So that's the process. So after I have some more work done, I'll come and show you my progress. Alright, I'm making quite a bit of progress here with the coil addition onto the vase. So I thought I'd explain the process a little bit. This is the extruder tool, and it's just got a tiny little hole right here that I'm using to push out my thin coils. I have some slip here and a brush, and I like to use this to apply the slip to the vase because it's easy to control where it goes and how much is getting on the vase. And then this is a stiff brush that's actually helping me to score the clay a little bit to help the coils adhere better. And this is the wire tool that I'm using to draw my designs in. And then I also have this one that's helping me cut coils or scoop away if I accidentally put any clay where I don't want it. I have this tool, and it's originally meant for like painting, but I like these little rubber tips because it helps me smooth clay together and remove clay where I don't want it, and things like that. So I'm using that tool as well. Right, so those are my tools and my process. I'm going to finish adding my small coils around my base, and then I'm going to start with the carving process, and then I'll end with this slip. So, as you can see on this section right here, I've started my carving of my designs inside my floral design here. I'm using these wire tools, and if you can see, they have tiny shapes, and I have a bunch of different ones that each have a different top. So I'm going to experiment with each floral design doing a different top to get different textures. When I'm finished with that, the last step will be to go over these little swirls and leaves with the slip, and that way I'll have tried 3 different techniques for texture on this vase. Alright, I have finished adding all of my textures with my wire tools and getting those done. Different tools, so they're slightly different angles, so I think that's really cool. And now the last step is to add my slip details, so that's what I'm going to do next. Alright, the lines are still kind of wet, but hopefully you can see the slip designs that I've done. This was by far the hardest technique that I tried because it was very hard to control, and I had to make sure the slip wasn't too thin or too thick to go through the piping tool. So that was definitely the most difficult part for me, and I'm hoping that everything dries okay. So I'm going to leave this, and when it is bone dry, I will show it off before I go fire it in the kiln, and then after that it'll be bisqueware and glaze. So I'm really excited to see the final process. But you can see it starting to dry out pretty well in some areas. This lid that's much smaller is probably bone dry. So it's going to the kiln, and hopefully I'll be able to get back in the building next week to fire it and show it off as bisqueware. If not, I'll probably just make another video later on. Maybe even make a video of the glazing process once I decide how I want to do that. My students all have input for me, so that's fun. Alright, there is my 3D slab jar / vase, whatever kind of vessel you want to call it. And it has small tiny coils extruded through the mini extruder. It has some carving details made with different ribbon tools, and then it has slip detail made using one of the bulbs for doing small line details.